Greetings to all peoples and kingdoms of Ada, and welcome to Shieldmaiden of Ada. The friendship of JRR Tolkien and C.S. Lewis is one of those astonishingly unique friendships that few of us find, but all of us wish for. Yet, for all its beauty and sincerity, it somehow managed in its later years to fall into the realm of something close to rivalry. How did this happen? What is the story of these two men, and how do they influence each other in their respective works? Humphrey Carpenter, in his biography of Tolkien, writes concerning this friendship. It is the great mystery of Tolkien's life, and we shall understand little of it if we try to analyze it. Yet that is exactly what this Shieldmaiden means to do. So sit back and let this Shieldmaiden be your guide into the wonderful world of Middle-earth. Any relationship is made up largely of the unique personalities of the individuals within it. And those unique personalities can serve to either build up that relationship or tear it down. In the case of Tolkien and Lewis, it did both. We will begin our study of the friendship of these two men by seeking a better understanding of their unique personalities. Lewis himself called Tolkien a smooth, pale, flunt little chap, and Carpenter added long-faced and keen-eyed to the professional's physical attributes. He seemed to be a perfectionist, obsessing over details and agonizing over characters and plot lines. Lewis, on the other hand, was described as having a quick mind and a generous spirit, more prone to laughter and open to possibilities. This is not to say that Tolkien was in some way a grumbling and moody old man, but simply that he saw things from a very serious, important point of view, while Lewis saw things more as an adventure and a chance. Tolkien took his writing very seriously, as did Lewis, yet both expressed this sincerity in different ways. It is a little surprising, given these opposite extremes in character, that they got along at all. They met one night in May at a meeting of the English faculty at Morton College. Carpenter says, "At first the two men circled warily around each other. But they soon warmed to each other when they found that they actually shared quite a bit in common. Northern myth was a common love of both men, and they began to meet regularly to discuss the gods and giants of Asgard. At this time, they began to share their writings with each other, beginning with their poetry, reading each other's work, and offering advice and encouragement." Tolkien wrote decades later, "The unpayable debt that I owed to him was not influence, but sheer encouragement. He was for long my only audience." But poetry and literature were only the beginning. Lewis and Tolkien found that they shared more and more in common. In his article, JRR Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, A Literary Friendship and Rivalry, Ethan Gilsdorf says thus of the two men: "Intellectually, they craved each other's companionship, but their relationship had emotional depth as well. They bonded over their harrowing experiences in the trenches of World War I. They shared the loss of their parents, which they had both endured as children. Sorrow over the past and the retreat from modernity gave them nowhere to go but their imaginations. They lost themselves in anachronistic tales and created make-believe places, engaging in what today we might despondently call escapism." Lewis soon found himself captivated by another aspect of Tolkien that will serve to unite them in an even greater bond of brotherhood: religion. Tolkien was a passionate Catholic. Lewis's mind was in a troubled state, refusing to believe in God, miserable because he wouldn't, mentally agonizing over truth in God and religion, and how one could possibly believe that such things existed, yet unwilling to cast it off completely. One evening, he, Tolkien, and another friend, Hugo Dyson, met to dine and stroll along Addison's Walk. They fell to talking about religion, and in a beautiful set of explanations, examples, and expositions, which, alas, we have not the time to dive into here, Tolkien showed Lewis how the world of myth that he so dearly loved and the stories of Jesus and his life and death are not so dissimilar. Tolkien described myth as invention about truth. We create myth because we are made in the image of God, who is the ultimate creator, and so we are meant to create and invent. The myths that we create, for example the Norse myth, have elements of truth in them, because we are all drawn to the truth. Ultimately, though, these myths are meant to lead us to the ultimate myth, the ultimate story, that of Jesus Christ and his sacrifice for our sins. Tolkien's explanation greatly touched Lewis, and it gave him much to think on. 12 days later, he converted to Christianity. Lewis's conversion marked the beginning of a new stage in his friendship with Tolkien. Both men began to expand their circle of literary friends, until the society known to the world as the Inklings came into being. Its members were all male, all Christians, most of whom were interested in literature. They would meet weekday mornings in a pub, and at other times they would meet in Lewis's sitting room. Manuscripts, stories, poems, and chapters from the members would be read aloud, praised, and criticized. Heated debates on talk of all kinds would arise. Tea and beer would be drunk. Fellowship and friendship cultivated. The books we have all come to love and cherish, the Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, were all heard read at meetings of the Inklings. Wouldn't it be fun to discover an old film of Tolkien reading in a hole in the ground there lived the Hobbit, while seated in that cozy little pub, surrounded by mugs of beer and lit by a roaring fire? Tolkien himself wrote of the pleasure of those days. Lo, we have heard in old days of the wisdom of the cunning-minded Inklings, how those wise ones sat together in their deliberation, skillfully reciting learning and songcraft, earnestly meditating. That was true joy. Yet, as many things as Tolkien and Lewis held in common, there were plenty of things that set them apart. Tolkien was a lover of language, Lewis of literature. Tolkien was a staunch, passionate Catholic. Lewis attended the Anglican Church. Tolkien wrote slowly and carefully, while Lewis tended to publish books more regularly. Perhaps Tolkien's fault was obsession over minute details and a tinge of jealousy. Perhaps Lewis's fault was his openness to every religious suggestion. The entry of Charles Williams, a novelist, poet, theologian, and critic, into the Inklings brought this latter fault of Lewis to light, as he became open to controversial theological ideas that Williams adhered to. A devout Anglican, yet from 1917 to 1928, he had been a member of the Rosy Cross, a strange brew of Christian mysticism, Masonic and magical ritual, with a bit of a court flavor mixed in. Lewis was able to overlook this in Williams, but Tolkien, while friendly and friends with Williams, was always wary of this part of his life. This was the beginning of the third stage of Lewis and Tolkien's friendship, and this is where we can see the beginning of the cooling and eventual decline of their friendship. It was a combination of many factors, not the least of them the extreme opposites of personality that Tolkien and Lewis possessed. It was the way they wrote stories. It was a determination of Lewis to write in a most childishly clear analogy, and Tolkien to bitterly shun any thought of such a thing. It was Lewis' openness to having modern-day scenes and characters interacting with a fantasy world, while Tolkien staunchly stayed in the medievalist time period he had created. Tolkien was stubborn and sensitive, often hurt by his friends' criticism, even if it was well-meant. He had only two reactions to criticism, Lewis wrote. Either he begins the whole work over again from the beginning, or else takes no notice at all. Anyone who is a serious writer, who sees in those stories and their characters real living persons and real places, can perhaps sympathize a little here. It can be quite devastating to have one's story torn apart, to have one's beloved characters analyzed and criticized. Yet such analyzation and criticism are rarely out of spite, as it was not in Lewis' case. He only sought to make an already wonderful story even better, and it is a true fact that neither The Lord of the Rings nor The Chronicles of Narnia would ever have been as beautiful as they are without the mutual work of both men. By the 1950s, their friendship had cooled considerably. Lewis had already become a popular author, christened perhaps somewhat icily by Tolkien as every man's theologian, while Tolkien continued his slow, painstaking pace of writing and rewriting, and exploring the same territory to make it even better than before. As an article on the subject puts it, Tolkien had helped Lewis to see the light, but Lewis's fame and celebrity, which arrived soon after, was at odds with Tolkien's quiet and devout ways. It seems that the two men never reconciled their differences and became close friends again after their falling out. However estranged they were, though, they never held hatred or malice towards the other, and Tolkien wrote on the eve of Lewis's passing that his death felt like an axe blow near the roots. It is difficult for us to imagine this, perhaps. So many of us love both Lewis and Tolkien for who they are and what they have brought to us. Yet we must remember that these men were only human beings, and as such had their own faults and failings. And as well, they had their own beliefs and passions. They were creators. They developed worlds and lived among them, and brought forth characters to populate these worlds. They felt passion and pain and love and frustration towards their creation, and they expressed those emotions in different ways. They were different men. Lewis may never have liked hobbits much. Tolkien may never have felt much fondness towards Narnia. Yet both stories have touched many people in their own unique way. I know they have in my own life. It is sad that Tolkien and Lewis could not reconcile their differences enough to remain close friends to the end. Certainly, they brought much to the other's life, and their wonderful words were made that much better by the shared love they had for the art of storytelling, by the encouragement they gave to each other, even by the criticisms and disagreements they presented towards the other's writings. Lewis would not have found a depth of religion to incorporate into his works without Tolkien, and Tolkien may never have gotten his manuscripts to the press had it not been for Lewis's constant encouragement. An online article on this subject says, when Lewis left his job at Oxford in 1954 to accept the chair of medieval and Renaissance literature at Cambridge, the fellowship had finally broken. It reminded me of the end of The Lord of the Rings. Frodo, irrevocably changed by his adventures and his wounds, chooses to leave Sam behind in the Shire and sail onward with Bilbo, Gandalf, and the elves to the Undying Lands. But, said Sam, and tears started in his eyes, I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too, for years and years, after all you have done. Frodo replies, so I thought too once, but I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. Neither Lewis nor Tolkien, it seems, fully recovered. What can we take from this brief study of these two men? We see that friendship is something of a necessity. Man was made to be in companionship with man. The sorrows and hardships of this life were not meant to be borne alone. We also see that even the very closest friends will never see or appreciate the same things perfectly. Yet this should not drive us from each other, but rather, it should serve to make us appreciate each other for the unique attributes and talents that each of us were created with. We are all on this earth for a certain and sure purpose. We must find that purpose and seek to fulfill it, and how much better it is to take that journey with a friend at your side. It may be your sister, your brother, your schoolfriend, someone you met at a library, at a dance, or at work. A friendship, Lewis said. Friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival. Yet perhaps Mary said it best. You can trust us to stick with you through thick and thin, to the bitter end, and you can trust us to keep any secret of yours closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. Thank you for joining with me today through the Word of Honor. What are your favorite quotes on friendship? Is there a special someone in your life you wish to honor as a friend and fellow companion on this journey through life? Share in the comments below. Please like this video, subscribe to Shieldmaiden, and join us again so we can explore more of Middle-earth together. Namaste.